Recap. Alchemy Emperor of the Divine Dao, Chapter 12:17. Chapter. The rise and fall of great powers is like the ebb and flow of tides, unstoppable, unpredictable. Who could have foreseen that the majestic heaven sect, once a towering colossus that cast its shadow across the galaxy, would one day crumble into nothingness? Its supreme pillar, venerable Trinity, had vanished without a trace. The 24 elites who stood at the heavenly body tier, figures who could shake worlds with a gesture, had likewise disappeared into silence. Such beings, it was difficult to believe they had simply perished. And yet, their absence spoke louder than any confirmation. The galaxy trembled. The majestic heaven sect had never openly declared itself the strongest force, yet the mere presence of an eternal river-tier existence was enough to suppress countless stars and civilizations. That silent deterrence had now vanished. With its backbone gone, order dissolved. Chaos surged like a storm long held at bay. Conflicts that had not been seen for ages began to stir once more. Entire continents would no longer be the limit of war. Planets themselves might clash, their skies torn apart by the fires of invasion. And yet, from such chaos, new legends would be born. For how could true prodigies rise in an age of peace? As the sect collapsed, its disciples scattered like drifting leaves. Each returned to their origins, some to ancient clans, others to imperial courts, seeking refuge in familiar lands. But Ling Han did not leave. He remained upon the Flying Cloud planet. For now, the Mo clan had mobilized its vast network, spreading threads of information across the stars. Searching for traces of the 5 sects, such a task could not be completed overnight. It required patience, and Ling Han had no intention of rushing. Before he set out, he had a goal. He would break into the Sun-Moon tier. Until then, time was his ally. During these days, Who Knew shared with him secrets of cultivation, truths that lay beyond the shallow understanding of this galaxy, mountains and rivers, suns and moons, heavenly bodies. These were not mere reservoirs of power. They were weapons. They could be unleashed. They could suppress. They could become worlds. A cultivator could release their mountains and rivers and trap an opponent within that domain, turning the battlefield into a personal realm of dominance. Suns and moons, and even more so, heavenly bodies, possessed even greater might. This galaxy, however, had barely scratched the surface of such potential. Its cultivators stood upon primitive ground, unaware of the true depth of their own strength. Such ignorance would never exist in higher realms. So my strength can still rise far beyond what I imagined, Ling Han murmured. To test this revelation, he suppressed his cultivation and sparred with Ding Ping, Feng Po Yun, and the others. They stood at equal levels. Yet the moment Ling Han unleashed his mountains and rivers, everything changed. His power surged. Within that domain, it was as if he had become the master of a miniature world. Every movement of his opponents was laid bare before him. Every action they took was influenced, restrained, distorted by his will. Even if thousands of mountain river tier cultivators surrounded me now, I could still defeat them one by one. He thought calmly. This was the true utilization of power. Compared to this, the cultivation methods of the galaxy seemed crude, like sparks compared to blazing suns. Yet Ling Han recalled something, venerable Trinity. At that critical moment, he had unleashed a silver river, an eternal river, forming a defensive barrier that protected Yang Hao. That was no ordinary technique. It must have been a secret art learned within the two-realm battlefield. And yet, he had not passed it down. Perhaps he had reserved it for a true successor, someone worthy of inheriting such profound knowledge. Ling Han, however, was not such a person. He did not hoard what he knew, though he would not teach such methods to the world at large. Those close to him, Feng Po Yun, Mu Rongqing, Ding Ping, would all receive his guidance. Hu Feiyun would learn it as well. And through her, Empress Luan Xing. As for what they chose to do with that knowledge afterward, Ling Han did not care, because in his eyes, this was not some forbidden art. It was simply the correct way to wield one's own power. Several days later, a starship from the Chaotic Star's majestic empire arrived. It had come to gather its cultivators. Hu Feiyun, Li Weiwei, and the others boarded, departing from this world. Ling Han had originally intended to kill Zhao Lun, but the man had fled swiftly, escaping aboard a merchant vessel and returning to the joint peace planet. Fate had spared him, for now. Meanwhile, Feng Po Yun, Mu Rongqing, and the rest chose to stay. Their purpose aligned with Ling Han's. They had all come from the small world. They had not forgotten. The five sects, the sins they carried could not be washed away, and so they remained, they cultivated, they waited. And when the location of the five sects was found, they would go, blood would be spilled. Thus, strength was everything. As time passed, the collapse of the majestic heaven sect reshaped the balance of power on the flying cloud planet. The four seas majestic empire and the great heaven majestic empire rose like hungry beasts. They expanded, they invaded, they seized the lands once controlled by the fallen sect. War followed. Large-scale battles erupted across territories, reshaping borders and fates, but none of this concerned Ling Han. He remained within his domain, unmoved. His focus lay elsewhere. The Mo clan had provided him with vast quantities of level 4 godly metal. With it, he refined his divine demon sword. Before setting out to hunt the five sects, two goals stood before him: break through to the Sun Moon tier, and raise his divine demon sword to level 5 godly metal. Though he had reached the peak of the Mountain River tier, the next step was not one to be taken lightly. The leap was immense. It required not only profound comprehension, but also an overwhelming accumulation of origin power. Without sufficient preparation, one would be drained dry. Body, soul, life essence, all consumed. Ling Han prepared accordingly. He gathered godly medicines. If his own accumulation proved lacking, he would rely on these treasures to bridge the gap. He would not allow himself to perish in failure. Thus, his days became singular. He abandoned alchemy. He abandoned distractions. Each day he sat beneath the reincarnation tree. He refined. He contemplated. He pushed his Mountain River tier to its absolute limit while reaching toward the mysteries of the Sun Moon tier. Time flowed silently. Half a year passed. To immortals, it was nothing more than a fleeting moment. But to Ling Han and his companions, it was as though centuries of insight had been gained. At last, Ling Han felt it. The threshold, he was ready. At that same time, the Mo clan delivered news. They had found them, the five sects, their location, Cloud Apex Planet, a world situated within the Long Light Galaxy. From the flying cloud planet, the journey would take 200 years by ordinary means, an unimaginable distance. That was why it had taken so long to uncover their trail. The Mo clan had woven connections through countless merchants, slowly expanding their reach across the stars. Only through persistence had they succeeded. Fortunately, Hu Nu had modified the cloud-piercing shuttle. It now far surpassed ordinary starships in speed. With a star chart installed, there was no risk of losing their way. Even so, the journey would take 2 years. Ling Han nodded. So be it. First, he would break through. He entered seclusion. 7 days later, a new world opened before him. Within his Dantian, a blazing red sun ignited. At that very moment, the heavens responded. Tribulation descended. Thunder roared. Lightning gathered. Ling Han stood firm. Once more he walked the path of agony. His godly bones shattered under the force of the tribulation. Yet within destruction they were tempered, reforged, stronger, unyielding. At the same time, the wealth he had amassed, through auctioning 4 drops of 1,000-source true fluid and numerous ancient pill recipes, had changed his fortunes. His debts were gone, his resources abundant. Without hesitation, he invested everything into level 4 godly metal. At last, the final piece was fed into the divine demon sword. It evolved. Level 5. Human and sword faced the tribulation together. Boom! The heavens erupted. Lightning tore across the sky, illuminating the void. Ling Han's body shattered and reformed under the storm. The divine demon sword trembled. Cracks spread across its surface like spiderwebs. Yet it did not break. Instead, fragments of metal peeled away from its form, slag, impurities, useless remnants cast aside. It was as if the sword itself possessed will. It refined. It evolved. It sought perfection. The storm intensified. Lightning poured down like a celestial waterfall. Both man and sword were engulfed. Their figures vanished within the radiant tempest. Only brilliance remained. A light that pierced the heavens and illuminated the universe itself. The heavens roared. Lightning coiled through the sky like furious dragons, tearing apart the firmament as if it were nothing more than fragile silk. Beneath that wrath of heaven stood Ling Han. No, not stood, endured. Each bolt that descended was not merely destruction. It was judgment. It was the purest manifestation of the Tao of heaven and earth. And Ling Han welcomed it. He allowed the tribulation to temper him, not just in flesh but in spirit, for he understood this was the sharpest blade the heavens could wield. If he could grasp even a fragment of its essence, his own Tao would rise to terrifying heights. This was not merely survival. This was enlightenment. Within the storm, Ling Han turned his focus inward. He was comprehending his own Tao. The so-called lightning sword technique he possessed, in truth, it was nothing more than a name. It had speed, it had destructive force, but that was all. It lacked soul, it lacked the very essence that justified its title. If it were truly to become worthy of its name, then it must embody lightning itself. What was lightning? How fast was it? What made it so terrifying? And more importantly, how could he make it his own? Even as his physical body was reduced to dust beneath the tribulation, his divine sense remained unwavering. Tempered by the indestructible heaven's scroll, his spirit had long surpassed ordinary limits. Though his body had vanished, his consciousness endured as a radiant sphere of light, untouched, unshaken, unbroken. The lightning of the heavenly tribulation struck again and again, yet it could not harm him, because his spirit had already reached a level beyond the early stage of the sun-moon tier. It hovered between the low and medium extremes. This tribulation, though terrifying to others, was simply not enough. Instead, it became his teacher. Within the storm, Ling Han observed everything. He felt the rhythm of lightning, the pulse of its power, the way it moved, the way it struck, the way it annihilated. He traced it back to its very origin, to its essence. A thought flickered through his mind. What a pity. Heavenly tribulations are so rare, and they never last long. But then his eyes gleamed, a new path opened. If I cannot summon tribulations at will, then why not borrow them? He smiled inwardly. Others will face tribulations, and when they do, I can stand beside them. If he could truly grasp this lightning, then not only his sword technique, but even his movement technique would undergo a complete transformation. Time passed. Half a day later, the thunderclouds finally dispersed. The sky returned to calm. Ling Han activated a drop of indestructible true fluid. In an instant, his body reformed, whole, flawless, reborn. But this was not the same body as before. Something had changed, something profound. He had stepped into a new realm, the sun-moon tier. His strength surged wildly, at least 1,000,000 times greater than before. Ling Han clenched his fist, feeling the overwhelming power coursing through him. So this is the gap of a major tier. Before, he had been capable of surpassing 10 stars in power. Now, only 6 stars remained. If he wished to once again break past 10 stars, he would have to reach the very pinnacle of the sun-moon tier. But even that was no simple matter. Only those who had reached the absolute peak of the mountain river tier, true pinnacle level elites, could possess 6 stars of power upon entering the sun-moon tier. Ordinary cultivators? They would struggle to even reach 4 stars. Even after reaching the pinnacle, most would hover between 4 and 6 stars depending on their achievements. Ling Han assessed himself calmly. In terms of raw power, I can already rival those at the late stage of the medium extreme of the sun-moon tier. But power alone was not everything. My understanding of the regulations is still only at the early stage of the low extreme. That gap could not be ignored. Even with powerful secret techniques, his battle prowess would likely only reach 6 to 7 stars. No wonder the world spoke of 5-star geniuses as legends. Exaggerated, perhaps, but not without reason. Too few could reach the true pinnacle. Suddenly, Ling Han's expression shifted. Huh? He frowned slightly. Small tower? Why hasn't the Black Tower changed? He had broken through a major tier. By all logic, a new level should have unlocked. His 5 elements should have moved closer to completion. Yet, nothing. To his surprise, Small Tower answered clearly this time. You need to advance 1 more tier. Ling Han nearly leapt in shock. What? I have to reach the heavenly body tier just to unlock the 5th level? His mind raced. Then by the time I reach the Genesis tier, I'll only have unlocked 7 levels at most. Wrong, Small Tower replied calmly. When you reach the Genesis tier, you will only unlock the 6th level. Ling Han froze. His thoughts came to a halt. Then the remaining 3 levels? His voice dropped. Do I need to enter the celestial realm to unlock them? Small Tower swayed slightly, its way of nodding. Ling Han fell silent. Small Tower continued, its tone as indifferent as ever. So cultivate well. When the Black Tower is fully unlocked, my memories will also return. Ling Han narrowed his eyes. Then your memories weren't lost. Perhaps. The answer was vague. Then Small Tower added, young man, strive forward. If you break through again at the Genesis tier, you will step into the celestial realm. Its voice carried a faint, distant weight. And in my fragmented memories, those who dwell in the celestial realm possess eternal life. Ling Han's heart trembled. What? Eternal life. Unlimited lifespan. What kind of existence was that? If one could cultivate endlessly, for billions, trillions of years, how terrifying would such beings become? Suddenly, many mysteries made sense. Even something like the reincarnation tree, which required 12 trillion years to mature. Genesis tier elites could not wait for such a span, but those of the celestial realm, they could. However, Small Tower spoke again. Do not be overly optimistic. Though their lifespan is unlimited, they are not indestructible. There exists the celestial decline. If they fail to overcome it, they will still perish. Ling Han nodded slowly. That made sense. Even the original master of the Black Tower had died. An endless life is not the same as invincibility. Small Tower suddenly exclaimed, young man, race toward the sun. Ling Han was speechless. This tool spirit was becoming increasingly unpredictable. Shaking his head, he returned to the small town. Now that he had broken through to the sun-moon tier, it was time to set out for the Cloud Apex planet. But fate delayed him. Feng Po-yun and the others began breaking through one after another. Ling Han had no choice but to stay. He waited for this wave of breakthroughs to pass. Feng Po-yun and Mu Rongqing both advanced to the medium extreme of the mountain river tier. Helion Tianyun went even further, reaching the high extreme. As for Ding Ping, his progress was monstrous. He stepped directly into the consummate level. If word of this spread, it would shock the world. Only a few short years had passed, yet their cultivation had surged at a terrifying pace. But in truth, this was only natural, with Ling Han providing a constant supply of alchemical pills to enhance their origin power, and with the reincarnation tree aiding their comprehension of Dao. If they still could not achieve such progress, then what right did they have to call themselves prodigies? Ling Han himself did not waste time. Each time one of them faced their heavenly tribulation, he stood nearby, borrowing their tribulations. To outsiders, this was madness. Who would willingly step into another's tribulation? That was suicide. But Ling Han was different. He did not need to use lightning to shatter his body. He only needed to observe, to comprehend, to absorb its essence. Thus, he stood calmly, watching, studying, learning. 4 tribulations later, Ling Han sat beneath the reincarnation tree. 3 days passed. When he opened his eyes, a flash of lightning flickered within them, sharp, terrifying, alive. He exhaled softly. The lightning techniques I once knew, he shook his head, are nothing but trash. The thunderclap ninth heaven? It was merely a low-grade technique from the immortal realm. How could it compare to the heavenly tribulation itself? One was a technique. The other was the embodiment of the heavenly Dao. There was no comparison. Ling Han's gaze turned resolute. As my cultivation rises, the tribulations I face will grow stronger. And so too will the lightning I command. His path was becoming clearer. Heaven and earth as my master, and I will forge my own Dao. With that conviction, he prepared to depart. Everyone had already endured their tribulations. There would be no further breakthroughs for now. It was time. Yet before he could leave, a figure appeared before him. Ling Han's steps halted. It was her, the Empress, Luan Xing. Not a clone, her true body. She stood there, her beauty veiled beneath the faint aura of chaos. Her presence was calm, distant, as though untouched by mortal emotion. Her voice carried no fluctuation. You are leaving? As a heavenly body tier elite, she had long mastered control over her emotions. Ling Han smiled. I plan to visit Joint Peace Planet to bid you farewell. He paused, meeting her gaze. I didn't expect you would come instead.